From Maisie Williams defending her flop role in The New Mutants, to Ryan Reynolds finally watching and liking Green Lantern in 2021, here are some actors defending their worst movies ever. Of course, I have to start with Maisie Williams in The New Mutants. Back in the day, the X-Men movies were the closest thing we had to a Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they were pretty darn good. But then Fox Studios made a bold move with The New Mutants, trying to shake things up with a horror twist to the mutant mythos. Unfortunately, the final result didn't quite live up to the hype and left many fans disappointed. But Maisie Williams, who played Wolfsbane in the film, still stands by it. She's super proud of what they accomplished, even though critics were slamming it left and right. According to Williams, there are so many cool and progressive things about the movie that people just aren't giving enough credit. She's passionate for sure. Reminds me of how Jennifer Lawrence defended her role in Mother. In the mid-2010s, Jen basically ruled Hollywood. She starred in Hunger Games, and then everyone wanted to work with her. But then, something unusual happened. Instead of just sticking to the mainstream projects that everyone expected from her, Lawrence decided to do something different. She used her star power to greenlight a horror thriller called Mother, and boy, was it a shocker. The movie was immediately ripped apart by critics and cultural watchdogs for its graphic, violent content. And let's just say that Lawrence's character was not having a good time in this movie. She was subjected to horrific torture throughout the film before willingly giving up her life at the end. Yikes. Now, you might think that Lawrence would regret her decision to take on such a role, but you'd be wrong. In fact, she welcomed the negative response from the public. She knew that the movie would create a conversation and controversy. Nobody was going to leave without feeling something. Even though the movie wasn't everyone's cup of tea, it got people talking, and sometimes that's all you need to make a mark in Hollywood. The few people who did appreciate it credited it all to Jennifer's acting, kinda like a certain DC movie. Even though Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice straight up sucked, Ben Affleck truly was the only good thing about it, and because of that, the response to the movie was complicated. Some fans and critics loved it, while others were less impressed. They had issues with the long runtime, the lack of Superman's dialogue, and Batman being portrayed as a middle-aged vigilante who wasn't afraid to torture and kill criminals. But Ben Affleck, who played the Caped Crusader, wasn't about to let the haters get him down. In an interview, he pointed out that the movie was a huge commercial hit, and that the criticism over its content seemed a little biased. In other words, people wanted Batman vs Superman to be more like Marvel movies, with lots of jokes and light-hearted moments. But that wasn't the tone that director Zack Snyder was going for, and Affleck was cool with that. So even though not everyone loved Batman vs Superman, it still made a ton of money and got people talking. Speaking of money, Babylon, starring Margot Robbie, didn't even clear the budget spent in making the movie itself. Damien Chazelle's Babylon was a love letter to Hollywood's golden age, and Robbie plays the lead character, Nellie. But this ain't your grandma's Hollywood movie, folks. There's some serious graphic content in there that had audiences clutching their pearls. But guess what? Margot loved every minute of it. She said she was allowed to do absolutely anything, and it felt so liberating. While she was filming The Wolf of Wall Street, she remembered thinking she would never star in a film that insane ever again. And then Babylon happened. So yeah, the movie might be a little intense for some people, but intense is a word that was lacking in this next box office flop. The 2016 Suicide Squad was a major letdown. It made DC fans go wild and left critics scratching their heads. The studio wanted to cash in on the success of Marvel's Cinematic Universe, but ended up creating a mess that even the most die-hard fans had a hard time defending. But not everyone involved with the project was ready to throw in the towel. Joel Kinnaman, who played Rick Flag, thought that the movie was judged unfairly by critics. He argued that there was a big gap between the critics and fans' responses. He said he was showered with love and appreciation for this, so it felt pretty phenomenal. In his defense, I'd have to say he was about the only halfway decent thing in the movie. While the fans were enraged, I think they were angrier about this next movie, The Ghostbusters remake left fans in an uproar. In recent years, it seems like Hollywood has been on a bit of a remake kick, and one of the movies that got the reboot treatment was Ghostbusters. But here's the twist. They went with an all-female cast, including the hilarious Leslie Jones. Unfortunately, the movie received a lot of hate from online trolls and didn't exactly win over the critics. But fast forward to 2021, and we've got a new Ghostbusters movie on the horizon called Ghostbusters Afterlife. Well, Leslie Jones was not happy about that, and she took to Twitter to vent her frustration. According to her, this movie is basically saying that the all-female Ghostbusters didn't count, and that Hollywood still doesn't think women can lead major movies. Ouch! That's a tough pill to swallow, but it was kinda expected considering the box office scores. But you know what was a real bummer that no one ever got over? The fact that Marvel hyped up the Eternals so much, and it ended up being subpar. Everyone was excited to see what new characters they would bring in after the Avengers Endgame, and they came up with the Eternals, a bunch of super beings who had been keeping Earth safe since the beginning. Unfortunately, the movie didn't do as well as expected at the box office. Some viewers thought it was too slow and had too many characters to juggle, which are essential MCU traits. However, Barry Keoghan, who played Druig, one of the Eternals, said that the movie's underperformance had more to do with it being new and different from the Marvel world. Again, he had the only performance in the film that actually had some depth. But still, it's probably a dark stain on an otherwise spotless acting career. The same thing happened with Wonder Woman 1984. After the success of the first film, fans were eagerly waiting to see what the sequel would bring. Unfortunately, the movie fell short in some areas and was met with some criticism. But Connie Nielsen, who played Queen Hippolyta in both films, thinks that people were too quick to judge. Nielsen believes that if people took a step back and looked at the movie as a whole, they would see that it actually made sense and was beautiful. She said that while the sequel may not have been perfect, it was still a thrilling adventure that took us back to the neon-soaked 80s. But that's not what defines a movie as successful, and Wonder Woman definitely wasn't successful. But none of these movies beat the legendary disappointment that was Green Lantern. It was supposed to be Ryan Reynolds' career pinnacle in the superhero game, but it seemed like this ring-wielding hero couldn't catch a break when it came to live-action adaptations. Warner Brothers tried to change that with a big-budget Green Lantern movie in 2011, but it was a big letdown for fans. The movie followed the traditional superhero origin story format, and it didn't bring anything new to the table. After the movie came out, Ryan Reynolds spent years mocking it, and even claimed he hadn't watched it himself. But in 2021, something miraculous happened. Reynolds finally got around to watching the movie, and he was surprised to find that it wasn't as bad as he had assumed. In fact, he tweeted that it wasn't exactly a tragedy, and praised the incredible cast and crew who worked tirelessly on the movie. Maybe it was the aviation gin talking, but Reynolds' tweet has given some fans hope that maybe, just maybe, we'll see that Green Lantern shine on the big screen again in the future. And that's all for actors defending some of their worst films ever.